All right, folks, buckle up because we're about to dive into one of history's biggest unsolved mysteries: poverty. That's right, for 5,000 years, humanity has been building empires, landing on the moon, inventing smartphones, and yet, we still haven't figured out how to make poverty disappear. Weird, right? So, why is it that no civilization, from the mighty Roman Empire to the modern day world, has been able to completely solve poverty? Well, according to the Lessons of History by Will Durant, it's not for lack of trying. Let's break it down. Inequality is as old as civilization itself. First up, inequality. You know the rich-poor divide we all complain about today? Yeah, it's nothing new. Durant points out that inequality has been baked into every civilization from the get-go. The moment humans settled down, started farming, and forming societies, well, started to pile up in the hands of a few. It's like history's version of the rich get richer and the poor, well, they stay poor. In ancient times, kings, priests, and warriors gobbled up the land, leaving peasants to work the fields and struggle to get by. Fast forward a few thousand years, and surprise, the system hasn't changed that much. Durant even throws in a funny but sad reality check. Freedom and equality are sworn enemies. You either let people compete freely and the rich come out on top, or you enforce equality and things get messy. It's like trying to mix oil and water. Doesn't matter how hard you shake the bottle, it just won't blend. Poverty has a sneaky way of surviving. Poverty is stubborn. It's like that stain on your favorite shirt that just won't go away, no matter how much you scrub it. Durant argues that poverty is resilient because societies have always been structured in a way that some level of inequality is unavoidable. Whether it's through political systems, land ownership, or good old-fashioned luck, someone always ends up at the bottom. Even in times of economic boom, the wealth doesn't magically trickle down to everyone. In ancient Greece, the philosophers were busy debating the meaning of life, but the poor, they were out there struggling to get bread on the table. And guess what? They stayed poor despite all the so-called progress happening around them. As Durant puts it, the concentration of wealth is natural and inevitable, and is periodically alleviated by violent redistribution. Yep, you heard that right, violent redistribution. Historically, the only time wealth ever really moved around was when there was a revolution or, a government toppled over. And even then, things would settle back into the same old pattern eventually. So, the rich and powerful would have their moment of panic, but they'd usually end up back on top after the dust settled. Attempts to fix poverty have backfired. Now, it's not like civilizations didn't try to fix poverty. Oh, they tried, all right. But those attempts? Well, they didn't always go as planned. Take Rome, for example. The emperors had this great idea to provide free grain to the poor, thinking it would solve their problems. It didn't. Instead, people became dependent on handouts, and the empire's finances crumbled faster than a cheap cookie. Durant notes that any attempt to enforce equality by force usually ends up backfiring. Why? Because human nature gets in the way. People want freedom, and with freedom comes inequality. It's like trying to force everyone to wear the same size shoe. Someone's always going to end up uncomfortable. Even in modern times, attempts to create perfectly equal societies have usually ended with, well, not so great results. Durant's point is that poverty has always survived every grand plan to get rid of it, from ancient Greece to the modern welfare state. The wealthy aren't going anywhere. Now here's where it gets real. The wealthy have a talent for survival. Through every war, revolution, and economic downturn, the rich somehow always manage to keep their riches intact. Durant notes that in every era, the wealthy find a way to either influence or control the political system to maintain their position. Take medieval Europe. When peasants revolted, the kings and nobles would throw them a few bones, but they always managed to stay in power. Even when the French Revolution chopped off some heads, a new elite class rose up to replace the old one. It's like a never-ending game of musical chairs, except the wealthy always find a seat. So, can poverty ever be solved? Here's the big question. Can we actually solve poverty? Well, according to Durant, the answer is probably not. It's not exactly the feel-good answer we wanted, but history shows that as long as there are differences in talent, ambition, and opportunity, inequality will persist. The more freedom we have, the more inequality shows up. Duranzuasun. Poverty isn't going anywhere because it's a natural byproduct of how societies work. The best we can do is try to manage it, alleviate it, and make life a little less harsh for those at the bottom. But a world without poverty? That's a dream that no civilization has ever fully realized. Conclusion. So, why hasn't any civilization solved poverty? Because history shows us that inequality, poverty, and wealth are tangled up in a messy, unavoidable knot. No matter how many kings, emperors, or governments try to slice it apart, it always comes back. It's a frustrating fact, but it's one that will Durant's The Lessons of History reminds us to accept. Poverty is as old as humanity itself, and it might just be here to stay.